It's Radio Raheem here with Joe Goossen at Tin Goossen Gym. You've got a fighter in the corner here, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. He's had a year layoff. A lot of things have happened in his career and his personal life in that time. How do you approach a fighter like him with the legacy that he's coming in with and the time off?
Well, that's a mouthful. But look, yes, he has had a year off, but he's also, a veteran. He's had close to 50 fights. He comes from a lineage of great fighters. His uncle, his father, his brother Omar. I think the key to this was that Julio decided to dedicate himself to a training camp up in Lake Tahoe. He knew that he had to go the extra mile for this fight to compensate for the things you might have mentioned. And, he was up there for over 5 weeks. It's not an easy thing to do when you're living, in a luxurious area, nice spot. You got your family, your friends, the good restaurants, the easy life. He decided to give all that up and go to a mountaintop and dedicated himself to a 6-7 day a week program where he was doing strength training, running the mountains, running down the lake in the sand, doing his swimming, doing his boxing, doing his bag work, his mitt work, his cushion work, his strength training. Look, he went to the mats for this fight. So I have to commend him for that and compliment him for that and applaud him for that. And I think that camp will compensate for a lot of what you had mentioned before that might impact him negatively. So I think his dedication to this training camp will serve him well.
It's no secret that Julio's had his challenges before dedicating himself in camp. What's been your experience with him? You just described some of it, but you now say that he's training in Lake Tahoe away from all the comforts that he has enjoyed in previous camps at his insistence. Was that his decision?
Well, it certainly wasn't mine. If I would have thought that he would have been up to something like that, I probably would have mentioned it. But, when we first decided to train, we had all agreed we would train here at my gym, which is not an easy place to train. A lot is expected of you here. But after a couple of weeks in LA, I think whatever came to him, whatever epiphany it was, whoever had discussed it with him, he made the conscious decision to say he wanted to go, and I was surprised in a good way. That was showing me that he just didn't want to train. He wanted to go beyond that, and he wanted to bring something out of him that maybe he hasn't done in a while. And those are all good things, because I like to be attached to guys that go the extra mile. And so I was all for it. I threw my hat in the ring and said, let's go. And we did. And look, it's not easy for me to pack up and leave the comforts of my home and the fighters I have in the gym behind. But I think it was a worthwhile endeavor. And I was all for Julio going that extra mile to improve himself. And I think it's really going to pay off.
Julio's also had a not-so-silent partner for the majority of his career in his father, Julio Sr.
That's right.
He's done some share of micromanaging in the past, trainers in the corner and the career. What has his involvement been in this camp, and what is your experience with Julio Cesar Chavez Sr.?
Look, any involvement I can have with Julio Sr. is a plus for me. First off, the guy had 100 fights or more, if I'm not mistaken. Put on some of the greatest fights I've ever witnessed, beat some of the greatest fighters I've ever seen. Any input I can get from Julio Sr. is a plus for me. So there's nothing he could say or do that I would consider interference. He's a textbook on how to fight and what to do, and he's been there. He's done everything. I thought he was only a plus. Now, he was up there, and more as an observer, he would throw in his 2 cents, which I gladly, received, and I listened to anything he had to say. He loves his sons, Omar and Julio, He wants to see the best for them. I don't think he's ever going to do anything that's detrimental to them. So I looked at it only as a positive. My only regret is that he wasn't there more often.
You know, you have a legacy of taking guys that are tough and gritty and kind of coming of age. You're something of a, a tough, gritty guy yourself, and bringing these guys over the threshold into manhood and maturity. It seems like it's time for Chavez to experience that as well with his new daughter and whatnot. Can you talk to me about that journey?
That's a great observation about him, not necessarily me. I think that you may be correct. I think he might, as they say, see the light to his future here. Because again, he's a star, he's a superstar in Mexico. He can be a superstar around the world. And I think he realizes that for all the reasons you pointed out, and then some. And look, you look at guys like Mayweather and Pacquiao, De La Hoya, they became superstars in their 30s, where the pay-per-views just went through rocketed through the roof. And I think Julio can see that in himself, that in the next 5, 6, 7 years, he can become a superstar that just blasts, pay-per-views, numbers sky high. And I think he wants that now. And, everyone, not everyone, but people like Julio that are talented, that have that opportunity, sometimes have to make a conscious decision to say, hey, I'm gonna do it right, and I'm gonna dedicate myself 120%. And that's what he showed me up in training camp. I think you may be right.
Turning our attention to the fight in the ring that's coming up just over a week. Fonfara is a heavy guy. He's going to be coming down to a catchweight of 72. With a layoff like over a year for Chavez, even a talented fighter can, have some ring rust, some timing issues. Why is this the fight for him to come back with?
Well, obviously I did not make the fight. I accept Fonfara as the opponent. Whether it would be he or anybody else, I would accept that challenge. Julio likes it. His father likes it. His management team likes it. You could say, fighter X, Y, or Z is going to fight him and ask the same question. Why Fonfara? It's the decision they made. And when I came on board, that decision had already been made. I wouldn't have argued against it necessarily, especially since I've seen how Julio performs. He's a very athletic, very talented. Fonfara is a very gritty, workmanlike fighter, very dedicated. He's good at what he does. He's got a tremendous jab, good straight right hand. And what he does well. And he's, like I said, he's going to be in great shape. He's going to probably be in the best shape he's ever been in. He's going to come looking for the win. But again, that's why we went to the mats and went up to training camp to prepare against what he's going to bring. And I like my guy.
And lastly, Joe, Chavez has mentioned Alvarez, Triple G, even Froch, and at this point, he may be an underdog against all of those guys. But with the experience that you've had with him so far, name a guy for me in that rank, the elite fighters that you feel like he can beat.
Well, anybody can beat anybody on any given night, depending on many variables and intangibles and circumstances. So it would be hard for me to go through that list right now and say this guy, that guy, or this guy, or that guy. Because what I said up front is true. Anybody can beat anybody on any given night. I usually leave those type of decisions about who they're going to fight and when they're going to fight them to his very well-qualified management team. And Julio himself. He's a brilliant kid. I got to tell you something. He's one of those guys that can pick apart styles intelligently, and he can get down to the minutia of what he's looking at. We went over who we're fighting, and of course when we talk about a game plan, he was able to see what a trainer sees, which is not always the case with fighters. So he's above and beyond what he does as a fighter, his intelligence there. He also can wear that other hat as a coach and pick apart and dissect who he's fighting and what would work best and what would not. So, these type of decisions about who would be easiest for him, who would be the best matchup, I'll leave to the guys that really do make those decisions. It's just like Fonfora. I came in when that decision was already made. I accept the challenge, and we're going to move forward with it. And when the next one comes, I'm going to put myself in the same position. You tell me, and then I'll do my job.
And switching gears just a little bit, I would be remiss standing here at Tin Goossen, talking to Joe Goossen, having attended, Dan's services, not to mention that and let you know that, of course, the boxing world still misses Dan. And he's the kind of guy that would make those decisions that you're talking about.
Exactly.
How are you holding up? How's the company holding up? The family? Just, the fans would like to know that you guys are doing well. We miss him so much.
Yeah, well, listen, I think about Dan every day. He was my partner since we started the business back in 1980, and he was my brother, who I love very much, and he was very good to me. He protected me. I miss that protection, and I miss that love, and I miss him. But on the other hand, Dan was a very faithful man to his religion. He went peacefully, and he showed me a lot of strength at the end, which I'll never forget, and that's what kind of sustains me, is that he was strong and faithful at the end. And I miss him, but I also will never forget that, or never forget him. And I appreciate the outpouring of sympathy and love from a lot of his friends and business associates. I will never forget that. The many people, including yourself, that were there for my brother at that particularly difficult time. But to sum it all up, I thank everybody that supported my brother and our family during that time. Thank you.
Joe, it's a pleasure to talk to you. You're a giant in the sport. I watched you growing up. It's so great to be standing here with Joe Goossen at Tin Goossen with Radio Raheem.